Ricky, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be on the show today. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you, Andy. I'm super hyped to be here. So I'm Ricky Alonzo, known as Rickynomics on Instagram. So my background is I grew up two Colombian parents, first generation American, and I grew up in Queens and traveled around the world. I was blessed with that, and that incorporates into a lot of the perspectives that I have. And when I apply it to my analysis, went to St. John's University, major in criminal justice, minor in homeland corporate security. After that, I was like, I really want to apply these skills somewhere. So went to the Army, went as a military intelligence analyst, uh, stationed to Fort Carson, went to Afghanistan. That was dynamic. And then after that experience, I was like, I really want to wrap up my MBA. So I got my MBA, return customer to St. John's University. And and I was able to add a concentration into real estate. And that's pretty much what my family business is. And that's what lends itself to my economic and financial understandings as well. And while I was getting my MBA, we have a mutual friend, Cyber Alyssa.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so was working with her in the counter human trafficking fight. We're still very good friends. And went around doing trainings. Another mutual friend, Ed Calderon. So I did a lot of
hmm
trainings with him. And go to Colombia, and I also do my firearms and strategic trainings down there as well. And that is and I use Rickonomics to kind of take all my experiences, and it helps back up my open source intelligence abilities, how to actually write in a way that makes it matter to everybody and to whoever you're trying to cater it to. So that's the breadth of what I am, I guess.
Man, that's like you've had, I have so many like really interesting people like on this show, and you're just like, oh, like I have these degrees, I served in the military, I did all this stuff. You just casually just mentioned that I mean, you're younger than me, and I think you've done more than me, so congratulations on that.
Thank
So
you.
you've had like this really cool like career arc. Like what attracted you to the OSINT field? What made this say like, hey, this is where I want to spend my time. This is where I want to put my energy.
That's you know what it's something that I reflect even when I do my writings today. It's like how am I writing about the economic collapse of Venezuela today, and how am I making that matter to individuals? How do I? And it comes all the way back to how my mom raised me, where she took not knowing as not an excuse. So she always made me search, whether it was the library, whether it was looking at public records. So, for example, like my mom's a professional, and so is my father in the real estate field. And it's like sometimes you need to know everything about the deal before it happens. But she had this pressure, and it was a healthy amount of pressure. It's like, well, listen, you're young, you know technology, go and find these things out, or go to the public records, go figure this stuff out so that we don't waste time. And that lent itself to being like, I didn't even know that was like the beginnings emergence of OSINT. But then when I went to St. John's, and I had all these detectives and colonels and all these people like in the criminal justice program was like new. So these guys were just like, I'm just going to share all the experiences we have, and let's see if that makes you
Oh,
a
that's
better
cool.
person. So it was like, wow, it's not just like textbook stuff. It's like, this was a case I had. This is how we found him. This is how we did this. This is how we did that. This is how you don't get in trouble, which is a big deal, like, and how to actually construct your evidence in such a way that you can bring it to a court, rather than looking like a stalker. And then and again, lands you in jail. So, and I took all of that. And then I would say the big refining point was going into the army and using all types of technologies that are super advanced. But then you realize, like, you know what? If I look at social media accounts, you know what I mean? Like, you can kind of
hmm
you can gauge what people care about, what people are doing. And that's how the OSINT capability started to grow even more, was just like the inception of making it apply to business, and then growing into like, wow, we really need to kind of figure out what's going on in this sector of the world. in a way that doesn't require like a $1 million satellite, like, so,
Sure.
yeah. So I would say that is what actually drives my passion for OSINT, to make it matter, not just for intelligence professionals, but for people like you and people in the audience that want to use it to defend their families.
Right. So
Yeah.
you have said the term OSINT, so have I. We've said open
Yeah.
source intelligence. Give
Mhm.
everybody what your definition of open source intelligence is.
Right. So, let's clarify like where this falls into, like, in terms of what is intelligence, right? So
Hmm.
intelligence is the refinement of data into usable information to achieve a goal. That's like
Okay.
a really, like, it's like you can, so imagine it's like you take a bunch of pictures of a car accident, right? And then it's like, okay, you hand these pictures just to your boss. And it's like, well, what the heck does this mean? The intelligence is like, well, it actually looks like he didn't brake and he intentionally hit the car because of XYZ. Oh, so this changes it from an accident to a collision. So that's making that matter. So that's intelligence at that point. The open source part is the legal gray area, right? Where you are going to public records that can be from, and it doesn't matter what capability you're using. It can be from the computer. It can be, from going to a website. It can be talking to professionals. You're using different capabilities that are available to the public. And that means even looking at uh, social media and things like that. So when you take all that and then you refine it and you make it matter, you're putting in intelligence, that's open source intelligence. Now, I guess what we kind of alluded to before this was when people are nowadays are looking at it from like the hacker point of view, they're
Hmm.
looking at it from the software point of view, they're looking at people are going to look at it in such a way based on their trade. So that's what I would say. And what then, and that I'm guilty of that because I'm looking at it from the finance point of view and the intelligence point of view. So you can come at it in any way that you want in terms of how you want to engage OSINT.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really is, what is your intent? What is the information that you hope to gain? And that's really, really what it means to you. All right.
Yeah.
So there are people who are listening who want to know the answer to this type of question. So I'll ask it. I'm going to play the dad card here. Let's say
Yeah.
I've got, a 20-something-year-old daughter and she just started dating a new guy that she met at work. How do I find out more about him and the interest in just protecting my daughter? I'm not trying to like creep on the
Mhm.
guy, but I just want to make sure that I think he's okay to be dating my child. What would I need to do?
I would say it's really easy to be like, use this program. You can find out everything
Mm,
about them. And I can give you a list of websites in terms of like how you can find out a lot about this individual. But what's really going to matter is before you even start, right? You have to know what makes somebody a threat to your daughter, right?
mm,
So if you start by saying, well, somebody who is violent. Okay, well, how do you find out the person's violent? Well, let's do a basic background check. And now there's a free way to do it, right? Which
hmm.
is you send a piece of paper to your local police department. And guess what that does? Now your name is attached to that background check. Anything happens to this guy, now you're in trouble. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you use like common websites, and people will be like, oh, but if you say the common websites, that's like you're paying for the service. And it's like, well, you're
Hmm.
actually looking normal. That's the thing.
Mm,
Because if you get a background check from White Pages, it doesn't look nefarious at all because employers use it, everybody uses it, it's common use. So what is that going to tell you? It's not going to tell you the person's a good person. It's going to tell you if this person was caught, you know?
mm,
So you
hmm.
can't immediately write them off. So, oh, assault and and it's also knowing what the words mean. Assault and battery, has a restraining
Hmm.
order. It's like, oh, these are signs that this person could be violent. So engage with that. You're going to bump into a bunch of websites that say it's free. And then you're going to click through 10 different types of panels. And then it's going to tell you, but it's for only $9.99. Just go use the big
Right.
ones. You know what I mean? if it's just for that, for this one instance, and this person's pretty serious, then it's kind of worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can also check for free if this person is a sexual predator, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Family
Mm-hmm.
Watchdog is one, and there's a bunch of other websites that use that. Make sure you're using different sources so that you're not getting the wrong name. You know what I mean? And make sure that it all lines up.
Right.
Um, so that's just to find out if this person's been caught being violent or deviant, right? Now, what is the traits of somebody that could be a risk to anyone, like to your daughter, to your son? What is something that happens more than just physical attacks? It's like reputation destruction. Is this person on social media? Is this person socially disparaging other people? Like so and so ripped me off. So and so did this. If
Mm-hmm.
you gotta look for someone who's bombastic, someone who's really willing, who projects their resentments. You're looking for negative personality traits. So it's not just about looking at the page. It's about going deeper into the person's personality. It's like, because here's what's going to happen, right? You're going to be like, your dad going to talk to your daughter. It's almost like you're going to have to present this as a case, when you compile everything. Because if you say, look at all these screenshots, look at him, like he still talks about his ex, he still does this, he still does. What does that matter? When you come at it and you have some evidence, and it's like, well, listen, people who display this personality is somebody that's going to be a risk to your future, to your reputation, and to your mental health. Because this is a person that cannot be mature on the internet. And I think that is what's more important to look for. Now, gaining and when you can go into that, you don't need like all this hyper technology to do such a light litmus test. It's like, is this person
Mm-hmm.
competent enough? Right. So that is what you're looking for when you go into the Facebook, when you go into Instagram, when you go and maybe he makes videos, find out what kind of videos he makes. Like, just because, for example, I train with firearms, that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily make me a violent person. It makes me capable, but
Correct.
not in itself makes me a bad person, because that's the lens that's going to have to come through it. Now, I've come across cases that someone shows me, right? And this person, I love people who hunt, but this person hunted and he showed photos that he was mutilating animals. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's somebody that is somebody that has a tendency that can be adverse to your daughter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going through the different lenses. And I'll be honest with you, the thing that's helped me the most when I'm looking at these cases is having a basic understanding of psychology. My mother,
Mm-hmm.
other than her accounting degree, she had a early child education background and raised me on psychology books. And I was just reading those. and then like I had a concentration in forensic psychology while I was going into St. John's, and having those perspectives and lenses when you're looking at these things on the screen is what actually helps me gauge how threatening someone can be. So if I were to say a good place to start is knowing what a threat looks like before even engaging in the whole trajectory of finding out who this person is online.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
that's a really good answer. It's not like, hey, just go to whitepages.com and see if they've been
Mhm.
arrested. Because the point that you made is that this is just showing that if you've been caught or not. And you and I
Mhm.
both well know from the me educating parents and you protecting people that creeps don't always get caught, or they'll hurt a lot of
Exactly.
people before they ever have any sort of government record to do
Right.
it. So yeah, man, that's a really good point. You can't just take a look at it and say, oh well, there's no arrest, so he must be a good person. That's not necessarily the case.
Mhm. Not, no, exactly. It's just a negative. It's just like, this
Right.
person tested negative for being caught. you know.
Right. They tested
So,
negative. I like that.
yeah.
So kind of give me a way that I can, as a parent, use OSINT to better understand any sort of potential online threats that my kids may face. I know that's a really broad question, but
Hmm.
what's your first thoughts there?
Um, and this is where I think it reflects back to like understanding the psychology of the problem, where it's like you have what are kids looking for nowadays in the internet that they're not getting from the real world, right? Attention. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for recognition. They're looking for things that you would normally find before the internet was in sports teams, was in going to the arcade, going to these places. So now the internet is a place to find
Mm-hmm.
these things.
Mm-hmm.
And what gives that instant satisfaction? Social media, TikTok with their inflated numbers, and going into the games that are now popular with kids. And then and the apps themselves are, well, it's kind of hard to say, right? They are kind of bad because they're wired to keep your attention. But these are
Mm.
just places, the same places that abductions can happen in a physical place. People manipulating and grooming kids can happen in these places too. Making the child aware of a problem that they can succumb to and giving them the tools to identify somebody who's trying to get a inappropriate amount of gratification from them, to protect your reputation, to protect your things, is kind of like the first shield, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is educating the kid that, listen, so for a game like Roblox, where people can actually create environments in any way, shape, or form, which can look non-nefarious, but heck, even like cartels are using them to reenact their assassinations, even though that's like not, like, yeah,
I
no, it's
had no
wild,
clue
right?
that was happening. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that is very. I'm careful with this. That's very on brand. But wow,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah, no, they have an incredible marketing department, and that's it's also important to know what kind of violence are you looking for as a parent, right? Like, are you aware that people can actually see reenactments of violent crimes on something like Roblox, or they can actually engage in these really crazy conversations with full blown adults? Are you monitoring their behavior? How much time are they on these things? Because the more time somebody's at a bar, the more likely they're going to get in a fist fight, right? So it's just like, like, so it's just like, take that analogy. It's like, well, if he's only playing for 30 minutes and you could kind of somewhat pseudo supervise that, least likely someone's going to be able to fully engage with your child and do something nefarious. So controlling time is another way of getting them off the X and making sure they're not going to go into these problems. But just making sure you're aware of the capabilities: video sharing, audio sharing. Is it disappearing messages? If this is checking off all those blocks, then it's like, this is something I have to actually look, because again, I could give a list of like, these are the websites that you need to be careful of, but the websites change. Once something
Mm-hmm.
becomes uncool, they hop around. But if you know how to look for capability, if you know what bad looks like, then, and it has to be according to your own moral code as well, right? Because if you don't even know what bad looks like, you know,
Mm.
how the heck are you going to know how to look for it? And that takes a lot of self education, and it's a lot of pressure on families today to get acquainted. And I would say, to save time, don't try to look for every bad website. Know what a bad website looks like, so then when you see it, you can, our first approach, be like, all right, that's being capped at 10 minutes, or that's being capped at no time, or actually I'm just going to flat out block this from their device. So that would be the how you would initiate using OSINT and using that mindset, because it's funny how everything in the training world, like, mindsets become super popular. Like, oh, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing what wrong looks like and teaching that to the kid and acting accordingly is going to be your best bet, rather than searching through, memorizing a list of websites that's going to be non-existent in like 3 months from now. So that's
That's that's all fantastic information. Like you're expanding my horizons here, and I felt like I was pretty educated on this before we started. So I'm going to call you Professor Ricky from here on out. So in addition to all the things that you have done, you have an MBA in real estate from St. John's. You told us about that. A big question that I've had, for about a year now, because this blew up on social media,
yeah.
is how much information can somebody find out about my home, about
Mhm.
my mortgage? Kind of walk me through what's all the
Mhm.
public information about the property that I may own.
Okay. So I can come at this because I actively do this, and that's full
Hmm.
disclosure. So I actively do this. For example, uh, there's a lot of people who don't want to, who are older, they're in retirement age, and they don't want to sell their home. And listen, I live in New York, and there's a lot of people who don't want to go to the sixth borough, which is Miami. You know what I mean? So, and and what happens is it's like out of a sense of like compassion, to be completely honest, like, well, if you can't really afford to be in your home, I'd rather you take out something called a HECM, which is like it's a loan program where the bank pretty much pays them to stay in the home using the equity of the house. And how do you find out someone qualifies? Well, there's programs, the age of the person who lives there. So if they're in that age bracket of 65, right, and over, if how much equity they have in the house, that's available. There's a lot of programs out there that I can see how much of your mortgage has been paid off. And I can also see if you're actually still making payments or you're going into foreclosure or you're having a tough time. So this part is like, well, this is for the marketing, but how can
Hmm.
somebody use this in a nefarious way? Well, if I know the name of your bank and I can just look and see the logo of it and everything else, I can just send a fake uh, letter from the bank going to that elderly person's home, right? And then it's like, hey, listen, you actually have to pay into this account and not the mortgage that you still have, right? And then this person's going to be falling behind. And that's just basically what you can pull from the internet. Now,
Hmm.
uniquely, Suffolk County has like a different problem because they were hacked. So a lot of the documents have been kind of like disarranged. So that's kind of an indirect form of protection that county has. So against people looking up documents, but for the rest of the country, people can find out how much you've been paying. Are you paying on time? Are you susceptible to deception like this? If someone sends a letter pretending to be your bank, and that is the kind of threat that can occur uh, against people nowadays, just basically with how much availability people have. Now, uh, the county that I usually work in the most has a way of protecting people against that. It's called the house system. Uh, it is called the house system. It is like like something with protection. I wish I could remember the acronym, but I know it works because I can see when people look up the deed. So it's your local county and your public records office that gives you a heads up. If somebody's looking at your deed, somebody's trying to pull title and letting you know, like, things are happening to your house that you should know about. And then this is when you contact them and say, I'm not authorizing any of this. So people can't just steal your deed from under you. And that seems to be a really devastating tactic that's been more popularized now.
Right. Like how realistic is it that somebody could actually steal your deed? And is this something that can be done legally, or is this just something that is outright illegal?
Let's look at something that is like a gray area. And then we're going to work our way to the dark, darker, darker, darker. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
what happens is that now there's so many policies flying through the air right now that people might not know which taxes they need to pay, if the if their property taxes have been adjusted. So what happens is that you probably see like ads for this as a quick way to be a millionaire. Questionable, but it's like you can buy people's real estate tax debts. So if somebody owes $1,000 on real estate taxes, and you pay it off, then now there's a lien on the property to you. And it's like, maybe you paid nothing. Like maybe they've been paying their mortgage like straight for 20 years, but they couldn't afford the property taxes. And then all of a sudden, now you have somebody that's like saying, hey, you know what? You owe me and I'm not going to accept any payment from you. So you can be pushed out of the property. I can start an eviction process. So,
Mm.
so you see, like, and then guess what? He did pay the tax debt, and you can pull up everyone who owes you taxes, who owes taxes, from the public records office, because that's public information. And and it's not financial advice, and nor do I endorse
Right.
this
Right.
activity.
Yes. Understood. This is for
But
educational
educational
purposes
purposes
only.
only, yes. But yeah, but hey, make sure you're up to date on everything, on what you're paying, because you could be susceptible to an attack like that. So that's just one instance. Another instance is people doing works on your home and putting like different forms of mechanics liens on it, not alerting you
Hmm.
to it. That's another way people can, anything that leverages somebody against you with debt
Hmm.
and their unwillingness to take payment because they rather have the house than the payment. So that is the common way of being leveraged. That's why knowing that you're up to date with your mortgage, knowing that you're up to date with your taxes, knowing that you're like, hey, listen, this guy's calling me and he's saying that I owe this. I know for a fact I don't owe XYZ because I'm on top of
Hmm.
my finances, and knowing where everything's going. And oh, I don't get physical correspondence from my bank because I did
Hmm.
paperless. So you see, like, and that's in these little ways of knowing what you owe and knowing who the people who you owe debt to, what they look like, is going to be your best defense right now. And having something like an alert of knowing that somebody's looking into your property, you know,
Okay.
if it's not in your public records office, I don't know, contact your congressman, make sure that they make that a protection, because it's more widely accepted now to have a
Okay.
public records office protect people now. So it's pretty, yeah.
Right. And I can go to the public records office and look up my stuff and just make sure that everything is still kosher,
And you
right?
can also look up who's been looking at your stuff, if that's
Okay.
documented. So I'd be like, hey, why is this like like why is this company looking at my stuff? Like, what the heck, and then they'll give you a heads up and where you're going to act from there.
Okay. So it might just be worth it, twice a year,
It's,
go meet a friend for lunch downtown, head over to
it's,
the records office, ask for that
yeah.
to be pulled, look at
Hmm.
it, and then you're on your
Or
way.
you can probably get it from their website. I mean, it might look archaic because most government websites do, but sometimes they do have a download your records here, and but you just have to prove that you're the owner. If they have that step, that's a good indicator that it's harder for people to pull for information about your property.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. So from your time in real estate and with all the OSINT stuff, is there a story that you have that you can share with us that kind of illustrates how these things work?
So it would be outside because of the realm of real estate. It was actually an incident, and this is something that unfortunately is what I'm really glad to have known these capabilities for. I had a very good friend who went to the University of Antioquia. It's kind of like saying they went to the MIT of Columbia. Like, what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like a really good university. So it's a public university. And unfortunately, because it's a public university and their administration can't tell the difference between a riot and a protest. So what happens is like you have violent activity that occurs on the campus, and she was cornered in a corner of in a building, and she didn't want to move out because they were throwing what was like potato bombs, which is like an
Mm.
inert bomb that, if once dispersed, it doesn't have any shrapnel, but it can lead to concussions. If there is debris on the ground, you can have a piece of shrapnel hit you in the neck. It's not as safe as the rioters think it is. I don't know what the heck they're thinking, uh, but what happens is that I was like, okay, so I already had the map of the campus, right? And I'm like, well, most of these people who do riots are also kind of narcissistic. So they're going to video this. So where are they videoing this? So I looked at Snap Maps, right? And I looked at
Yeah.
X, right? And I saw that there was people like, yes, we're here, we're doing this. I'm like, okay, he's in building A and that guy's in building B. And then I was like, well, let me pull up the history of all the riots that happened here. Oh, 80% of them happened near the library. So what I did was this was all live. She's on the phone, like, scared, obviously, right? And I'm using Google Earth Pro, excellent tool if you want to familiarize yourself, because then I started drawing lines on the map of where where these protests never happened, right, on the campus, and she used that path to evade all the problems. So that was like, you're using social media, you're using tools that are accessible to you. You have to understand how people behave in that situation, right? And also address the threats. Like, she just wants to avoid the problems and she doesn't want to get a potato bomb landing next to her foot. So it's like, okay, well, this is the path you need to go. And that is how I use OSINT, like, live on the fly. I always use it for just for route planning, because I go to Latin America a lot, and I use that to look at the same tools, right? And I can see if people are blocking a road. I can see, and I can also understand why they're doing it. If I'm a target, you know what I mean? If these are people who are just like for example, when in 2021, we were still in the plague era, right? We were still in that, and a lot of people were inside, but people took advantage. And I live on like a 24th floor. I have an apartment down in Colombia, and I'm overseeing people going out and like burning a building, like what looks like a structure, right? I'm like, oh my God, this is freaking crazy. And like, the people burned the structure. They were running out. I had night vision, because I was able to get that in Colombia somehow, right? I have a bulletproof door. I made sure that thing was sealed up tight, and I was observing, and then a cop was in an altercation and shot a 17-year-old guy in the chest. And I was like watching that. And then the whole entire town started coming alive. And then you saw riot police. They didn't do their route plan, because I call that part of town Hotel California. Because once you're in, you don't come back out, because there's only a one-way in, one-way out entrance. So all these rivalries had to go in. They're getting firebombed. They're getting everything. And they were going around. They had to go all the way around through the town to come back out the same way they did. So that car did not look the same on its way back out. So, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? You're looking like, oh, it's because it was a toll booth that was supposed to be removed 4 years ago. So if you could imagine, there was a mile distance between the new toll booth and the old one that's supposed to be, and they kept both of them up. So all the people who were living in between the space were really pissed that this thing was still up. So what does that mean if I knew that context? They're not attacking foreigners. They're not attacking. I'm not a target. They have a goal. And it means that if I had to navigate the situation, I couldn't just pretend to be like, yeah, screw this toll booth, and then just go right around, and that being able to familiarize yourself with the problem before approach is the goal of the open source intelligence. It's the goal of, like, everything before you're landing, everything before you're going in there, and you're using something that people are commonly using to understand the circumstances. Those were, I would say, two scenarios that was like that happened actually recently. So
yeah, that's wild. Yeah, like your whole point of, okay, I see all of this violence that's happening, 23 stories below. Why is this happening? I don't think that's a question that that a lot of people would stop to think, because like if I were there as an American, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, oh, maybe they're protesting, America has done something that they don't like.
Mhm.
So I'm instantly going to be afraid. But having that context that it's this toll road booth that's
Mhm.
really the
Yeah.
issue is like, oh, okay, well, this is still not, I'm not going to go, jump rope in the street, but
Right.
like, I know that they're not going to be like, hey, let's go get that guy just because he looks
Mhm.
different. So that's a
Exactly.
really good point.
Yeah. Knowing the context, and it's such a, and how do you identify the violence that can personally impact you is what's going to make all this analysis make sense. Is and how you use the tools and everything else. It's here that has to get trained first. So
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
Professor Ricky, before I let you go, if I want to keep my information private, if I, want to make myself hard to research, what are some things that I can do for that?
Um, if you want to start fresh, and I would say if you're somebody that's getting a lot of spam mail, if you're somebody that's getting a lot of like spam phone calls and stuff like that, you already know that you're saturated with you already know that your information's already out there. Um, you can use like services, I think like what is it, Cogni and all these other Delete Me. Like
Delete
if
me?
you
Yep.
want to just yeah, if you can just wipe yourself, from that as a good fresh start, fine. It's unfortunate that you kind of have to do that now and have somebody and sublet that responsibility rather than you going to each website and do that. But
Hmm.
I would say that's probably if you are somebody that's getting those problems, that's something you should probably do. But if you're not, but you just want to like make sure you can control who sees you. If, for example, if I'm looking into somebody and I see that they have no presence online, it's a red flag for me because I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, so you do keep secrets, right? You do, like because now not being in social media is a choice. It's not the default anymore. The default is you have social media as
Hmm.
from a sociological point of view, right? So what I would say is you have rather than trying to make yourself impenetrable and no one knows who you are, this is the time in history where you can control the narrative of who you are.
Hmm.
So having different emails for different purposes, one that's your dedicated to banking, decentralizing your identity in that manner. Like this is going to be for all the money that disappears from my account, which is Netflix, Hulu, and everything else. That's going to be for that. This is going to be for certain social media pages. So if somebody does compromise it, they can only control one part or one aspect of yourself. And it's not going to be like, oh, the same email that I use for my banking is the same one I use for my Facebook. It's like, oh, oops, it leaks into it. But in terms of like social control, like a nosy employer or something like that, you can develop a social media page where it's like, it's your face, but it's you with photos that you've in places you never frequent, right? You're like,
Hmm.
this is my favorite bar. You never go to that bar. You're not, you're like, oh, these are people I love. They're AI. They're not real. Like, and you feed enough for curiosity. You give the perspective like, oh, this guy just doesn't post a lot, but I can kind of gauge who he is. And then the search kind of just backs off from there. But if it's like, and it's public, but your real account and your real communications can be on something like Signal. If
Hmm.
people who really want to reach you, that's where they're going to reach you. Not because it's the most secure and end all like measure of security. If someone's contacting you there, they are at least within that social circle that that's how they're going to reach out to you. And the spam call isn't going to be like, oh my God, I'm in Mexico. I need money. And, like, that's not going to be real. So decentralizing your identity to throw people off is probably your best bet. Instead of trying to vanish completely and decentralizing your emails for different purposes and creating narratives. And like this is an account that you send your acquaintances, your job, your employers, and that's what you send them to. You send them to that account. If you want to promote them to your real account, then you can pluck them. You know what I mean? Or they just stay there and they'll never know. So that is, I would say, an easier way of doing it. VPNs are pretty useful if you're going to do transactions and activity. Again, not the end all be all of security. It just makes you harder. All you're doing nowadays is buying time. You're buying
Hmm.
time. If someone really, 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 really wants to get to you, at least you're putting all these walls and measures that's going to make it difficult, you know. But being impenetrable is a flip phone that your phone, that it's not even your phone, it's your buddy's phone, and like you're off the grid, and it's all, and that's it. But this is the risk of existing now, and the only thing we can do is put as many barriers now, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Right. The risk of existing. That is, yeah, that is one of your observations that is sad but true here, man. That's
Well,
cool. All right. So, Ricky, if people want to know more about you and what you're up to, where can they find you online?
bro, I do a lot of my public posting on Instagram, Rickonomics. It's gonna have this logo right here. Oh, it vanished, but there we
Yeah.
go. Uh, and also I do some short format on X as Rickonomics 212. But a lot of my papers, research, and even like the beginnings of OSINT for everybody else, that form's going to be up and it's going to be on my Patreon, and that's going to be accessible to everybody for an amount of time. But I'll be doing seminars on there. I'm going to be presenting like how to actually assess threats and those type of lessons plans. The heavy duty stuff is on my Patreon as Rickonomics. That's how people can reach me.
Very cool. So, Professor
Mhm.
Ricky, thank you for hanging out with us today and for educating us on just a wide range of stuff here. This has been phenomenal, man. I appreciate you. God bless you and what you're doing.
God bless you too. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing experience.